Hello everyone and welcome to another video. Now in today's one we're taking a quick look at Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, possibly one of the best looking games of 2023 so far. Now the minimum specs for this are pretty intense. I mean 1080p low with FSR quality for 30 FPS. You need a Ryzen 5 3600 or an i7 8700K as well as an RX 5700 or GTX 1070. These are according to the Ubisoft webpage, of course. I'm running it here on a 4060 Ti and I'm just about scraping 60 FPS with no FSR enabled, and this is with the Ultra preset, but this is pretty early on in the game and I'm sure performance is subject to change. Now if you've been here a while then you'll know I like to turn things down a notch and try and run the latest and greatest titles on nothing but integrated graphics. So we're going to be doing that today with a couple of options, namely the Ryzen 5700G with its Radeon HD graphics, as well as the Intel i3-12300 with its UHD 730 graphics. So don't get used to this beautiful graphical display you're seeing on screen because we are very shortly about to absolutely destroy the visuals. So let's get into it and start with the Ryzen 7 5700G CPU. Now for the settings, obviously we're going to be going with low. The settings here in terms of upscaling, which we will need, do confuse me a little bit because we can choose between temporal anti-aliasing here as well as FSR 3, but we can still set the scaling quality between ultra performance and ultra quality. So I'm thinking, and I'm not sure, when we do this we're basically selecting FSR 2 instead of FSR 3 when we just leave things on TAA and then set the scaling quality and scaling mode. I'm not really sure how it works, but what I can tell you is that when we turn on TAA instead of FSR 3 and then set the scaling mode to ultra performance, we do get slightly better frames than we do with enabling FSR 3. So I'm going to stick with TAA and ultra performance upscaling because we do get about 1 to 2 frames per second more. But as you'll soon see, well, that doesn't really matter. Okay, so here we are then with the Ryzen 7 5700G, the Radeon HD graphics. These are clocked at 2000 MHz. I'm also using 16 gigs of 3200 MHz dual channel DDR4. I imagine that if you had higher frequency memory you may be able to get a few more frames from the game, but I don't think it's going to be anything game changing, to be fair. I mean, here we're getting less than 20 FPS. This is one of those games that still looks pretty good even on the lowest settings. This of course means that we're not going to see a huge performance jump at the lowest of the low settings because it's still a very good looking game. But as I said before, we're still getting a couple of frames more than we were with FSR 3. I haven't done any exact averages or percentile lows because, I mean, you can see for yourself it's basically unplayable with these integrated graphics at 1080p upscaled. What I then decided to do was drop the resolution to 1280 by 720, and this is as low as we can go. So if we set things to 720p instead, still using ultra performance, we are getting closer to 30 frames per second, but it's going to be a bit of a blurry mess, and as you can see by the performance here, we still can't hit 30 frames per second. Now performance will vary depending on the hardware you're using and the integrated solution you're using. I have a feeling that newer 680M graphics or even the RDNA 3 780M graphics found inside some more modern Ryzen CPUs will do a better job. You might be talking double the performance, to be fair. I also tried to edit the amount of VRAM that was applied here. So here 4 gigs, we limited the VRAM usage to in the BIOS. This is of course shared with the system memory. I tried setting this to 8 gigs, but performance unfortunately didn't really change all that much. So yeah, 30 FPS is sort of doable if we look up at the sky But I mean, no one wants to play a game like that. You can't. But if you want to get 30 FPS, that seems to be the only way to go about doing it. Now though, let's all have a bit of a laugh and move on to Intel UHD graphics. This is where things got a bit messier. Okay, so here we are in the pause menu. You can see we're getting at least 60 frames per second and apparently using no VRAM. When we exit the pause menu, we're still using 0 megabytes of VRAM. Apparently this is some sort of issue with Afterburner. But yes, now I'm no David Attenborough, but I can just about make out a tree on the horizon there. I do believe that is a tree, and if we look at the floor, we can see some foliage. Now obviously, I believe that most of you would be in agreement that this is pretty much unplayable. This is the i3-12300 with the UHD 730 graphics and the latest driver available at the time of this video on the Intel site. I can't remember the driver version off the top of my head, but about 10 FPS with the same 720p upscaled resolution. Again, FSR3 was off in favour of upscaled TAA because it just performed a bit better. We're talking 2 to 3 frames per second. I did think about turning scaling off completely and just running at native 720p. I thought maybe this would help and it was some sort of FSR glitch, but it turns out that that didn't help. In fact, we just lost about 3 or 4 more frames, so 6 or 7 FPS now. Pretty terrible all in all, to be quite honest, but nothing that wasn't expected. Now overall, Avatar Frontiers of Pandora, as I said before, is a pretty good looking game. I haven't actually got very far into the story. What you're seeing on screen is basically as far as I've got. I'm about 20 minutes in, but so far I'm enjoying just walking around, taking in the visuals. I mean, it looks absolutely fantastic. The water, especially when you look at the ground, all the rivers, things like that. Not even sure, to be honest, what the story is about all that much. I just saw this, I saw a few reviews and I thought I have to test this out, and I definitely am looking forward to playing this one too. As I said before, performance results may vary. I mean, if you try a 680M or a 780M integrated solution, or maybe you try better integrated Intel graphics and perhaps combine those with faster memory, you may see better results overall. But from the hardware I've tested today, yeah, the 5700G with the Radeon graphics and the i3-12300 with the UHD 730 graphics can't really play this game, but I was sort of expecting that. I think the results were okay when we upscaled 720p, 30 FPS in some areas. It's going to be a pretty frustrating experience, but I can't complain too much. I mean, no graphics card, you know, it's always impressive what these chips can do working with nothing but the onboard solutions. But there we are. I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I'll see you all in the next one.